If you lived in Boaz, Alabama, or the surrounding areas in the 1920s and 30s, part of your Christmas experience may have included a highly anticipated visit from a man by the name of Walt Cagle. You may have also gotten your winter forecast from old Walt as well. You see, Walt was somewhat of a local philosopher and apparently a walking farmer's almanac. Born on March 6, 1891, he was a rural farmer in northeast Alabama. In 1917, he suffered from what locals called a sleeping sickness, and afterwards he started gaining weight and could not stop. Standing at 6 foot 2 inches tall, he eventually ended up weighing about 562 pounds. This was the last estimate on record. This was calculated when he came to town in his mule-pulled wagon with a load of seed. When the wagon was weighed to calculate the amount of seed in tow, they suggested that they get his weight since no human scales could weigh him at the time. So after weighing the wagon with the seed, they told him to jump out and weighed the wagon again, revealing a figure of 562 pounds. He eventually grew too large to run the farm, so to pass the time he sat around and became keenly aware of the animals on his farm as well as the wildlife. He observed the animals and became quite good at predicting the weather based on his observations, which included just how many nuts the squirrels were storing up for the winter. His knack for predicting the weather was so on point that the neighboring farmers took great heed to his predictions, and he was right more times than he was wrong. He also had time to ponder the questions of life and was given the title of philosopher. In that day and time, rural farmers in Alabama would go to town once a year to buy winter essentials such as long underwear, overalls, and heavy shoes. It became his tradition to go to town to procure his winter essentials about a week before Christmas. After about 2 decades of this tradition, he started to draw more and more attention during his trips to downtown Boaz. His reputation spread far and wide as an excellent predictor of the local winter weather. Locals started observing his purchasing habits and followed suit. If he felt as though it was going to be a rough and/or a long winter, he would buy thicker clothes in greater quantities. Fellow shoppers in town at the time would do the same, and the store clerks would pass word to shoppers that came in after Walt's visit as to what Walt had purchased so they could do the same. His typical overall size was a hefty 72-inch waist. He would special order his overalls, shirts, and shoes at Amberson's department store in Boaz, though his long underwear could not be special ordered and had to be hand-sewn by his wife Minnie. He would purchase the flannel at Amberson's for the handmade long johns, which required 14 yards per top and bottoms. The store's owner's grandson recalled in an interview later in his life that Walt would take up the whole sidewalk as he walked down it. He stated that his appearance in town became quite an event. Locals would crowd around while he told stories and predicted the weather. With his popularity increasing year after year, many waited to do their Christmas shopping on the date Walt was expected to come to town in hopes to get a glance of him and hopefully meet the jolly fella. It seems as though his visit was very good for the town's merchants' sales, so they got together and formed a plan to honor and celebrate the beloved farmer. In 1935, Mayor Creel declared the day Walter came to town as Walter Cagle Day in Boaz. However, it had snowed that day, unusual for Boaz, and Walter had been delayed by the death of his old trusty mule. So, when he hadn't shown up in town when expected, the town sent for him. The fire department sent out the fire truck over the dirt mountain roads over to Walt's farm to pick him up. Walt mounted the fire truck and they set off for Boaz proper. When the truck reached town, it paraded Walt up and down Main Street for all to see. The festivities that day included a presentation of the key to the city to Walt. He was also given a fried chicken feast. It didn't stop there, though. He judged the Miss Boaz pageant as well as the Miss North Alabama pageant. Before the actual day he came to town, the locals started bringing gifts for Walt, and they numbered so many that they were stored in a local warehouse awaiting Walt's arrival. A national reporter from Chattanooga caught wind of Walt's story and the impending Walter Cagle Day and made the trip down to Boaz to cover the story. He reported the events of the day and noted that about 5,000 people from far and near visited downtown that day for the occasion. Walt received so much attention from the media that his story spread across the country. He was invited to New York City to be interviewed for a radio program. He made the trip to New York by train, but was too large to fit in the coach seats, so Walt had to ride in the train's baggage car. Most would have been upset about making the trip in such accommodations, but Walt didn't let that get him down. He made the most of the trip. With his celebrity in full swing, he started making appearances on behalf of the Lee Jean Company, of which provided him with free pairs of overalls as needed. The promotions included giant-sized overalls being displayed in store windows to bring attention to the brand. Walt Cagle Day in Boaz was such a hit that year in 1935 that Boaz made it an annual event, holding the celebration in 1936 and again in 37. Sadly, though, 1937 would be the final year for Walt Cagle Day, as Walt passed from a heart attack at the age of 47 on either June 29th or 30th, it's disputed, 1938. It was reported that Walt was buried in 80-inch pants and his casket had to be special made in Birmingham and shipped up to Boaz. The casket measured 7 feet long, 3 foot wide, and 31 inches deep, and took 16 pallbearers to carry. Oddly, the same report recounted his legendary breakfast, which was said to include 1 dozen eggs, 2 gallons of milk, a half-gallon of sorghum syrup, and 20 biscuits. However, I believe that may have been exaggerated just a bit. Walt was laid to rest in Thrasher Cemetery in Mountain Borough, Alabama, just outside the city of Boaz, who held him so dear.